Everyone remembers the Tang Dynasty as China's greatest golden age, a time of magnificent cities. But behind the shining palaces of Chang'an existed another world, a world of crushing taxes, exhausted farm. In this cinematic first-person documentary, you will journey through the hidden side of Tang China as Wei, witnessing the empire beyond its glorious image. In the winter of 755, Chang'an still believed its golden age would last forever. Rumors began arriving long before the truth. Something terrible was happening in the north.
People whispered one name again and again. An Lushan.
Beyond the mountains, one general now commanded an army powerful enough to challenge an empire. The rebellion had begun. More than 100,000 soldiers were already on the move. Entire communities disappeared overnight, leaving only silence behind. For the first time in generations, the Tang Empire faced an enemy from within. The Golden Age ended not with celebration, koto, but with the sound of war. History remembers kings and generals. I remember the families who lost everything. This was only the beginning. Ahead lay the road to Chang'an and the collapse of the greatest empire on earth. Within days, the roads of the empire no longer carried merchants. They carried survivors. Some cities surrendered without a fight, because everyone already knew resistance meant certain death. This was no band of rebels. It was a professional army trained by the empire itself. Every hour brought another report of defeat. The rebellion was advancing faster than anyone had imagined. The empire had always believed its armies could never be defeated. Now they were simply trying to survive. When kingdoms fail, kindness often becomes the last refuge of ordinary people. If Luoyang fell, nothing would stand between the rebels and the heart of the empire.
The war had reached one of China's greatest cities.
For those trapped inside the city, history became a matter of surviving one more hour. The rebellion could no longer be stopped at the frontier. It was now marching toward the very soul of the Tang Empire.
The closer I came to Chang'an, the more I realized the empire was already collapsing, long before the capital had fallen.
For the first time in generations, fear had entered the capital.
Inside the palace, every report brought worse news than the last.
The empire still possessed wealth, armies, and magnificent cities, but it no longer possessed certainty. The emperor gathered every soldier he could find, hoping it was not already too late.
The land itself seemed to warn us that the rebels were drawing closer.
Look there, on the horizon! An army approaches!
Then we saw them, an army so vast that it seemed... For thousands of innocent families, survival meant leaving everything behind. The greatest city on Earth had never looked so vulnerable.
By sunrise, the emperor would face a choice that would change the fate of China forever. For decades, the emperor had ruled the greatest empire on Earth. Now he faced the greatest crisis of his life. Every new messenger carried another defeat. Every report brought the rebels closer. The walls of Chang'an had protected the empire for generations, but walls alone could not stop fear.
From that hilltop, I finally understood why every frontier city had fallen so quickly.
The greatest city in the world had begun preparing for the unthinkable. The palace was preparing for something no one dared say aloud. For the first time in his reign, the Son of Heaven abandoned his own capital. The emperor was gone, and the people were left to face history alone.
The journey south became a desperate race against time and against despair.
At Mawei, the Tang Dynasty reached its breaking point. What happened next would become one of the most tragic moments in Chinese history.
The soldiers had fought without rest, and now they refused to march another step. To the exhausted army, someone had to answer for the disaster. Then everything changed in a single terrifying moment.
The emperor's own soldiers had turned against his court.
The rebellion outside the empire had now become a rebellion inside the emperor's own camp.
History would forever remember this place, where love was sacrificed for the survival of an empire.
In saving the dynasty, the emperor lost the person he loved most. No one celebrated our escape. Every mile south felt like another piece of the empire left behind. The greatest city on earth now waited for an army that was only days away.
Chang'an had survived for centuries. Tomorrow, it would face its greatest test.
At sunrise, the greatest city in the world stood completely surrounded. Ordinary people prepared not for victory, but for survival. No one spoke. Every soldier knew the fate of the empire might be decided before sunset. Their confidence was terrifying. They already believed the capital belonged to them.
The gates could protect those inside, but countless others were left behind. The palace that once ruled half the known world had fallen silent. The outer defenses were collapsing one after another.
When governments failed, compassion became the last defense of civilization.
That night, Chang'an became an island surrounded by war.
When the sun rose, the golden age of the Tang Dynasty was about to end forever. The battle for Chang'an had begun. I was not a general, but every pair of hands mattered that day. The walls shook beneath the weight of thousands determined to break through. Soon the smoke hid everything, except the sound of men fighting for their lives. The battle outside the walls had become a struggle for every family inside the city. We had survived the first day, but no one believed we could survive many more.
The rebels had come prepared for a long war.
At that moment, we knew the walls would not hold forever. The city was no longer fighting to win. It was fighting to endure. The golden age of the Tang Dynasty had not disappeared in a single day. It was fading before my eyes. The fighting had entered the city. From this moment forward, no one was truly safe. Only weeks earlier, merchants from across Asia filled these streets. Now, There was only silence. When kingdoms collapsed, humanity survived through ordinary acts of kindness. The palace still stood, but the empire that built it was disappearing.
Power had changed hands, but fear remained the same. Cities do not die all at once. They fade, one empty street at a time.
The greatest migration I had ever witnessed was not driven by hope, but by survival.
War destroys more than cities. It destroys the harvests that keep civilizations alive.
Empires are remembered for their victories, but history belongs equally to those who simply endured. The Golden Age was gone. Ahead lay years of war, and millions more lives forever changed. The rebellion did not simply conquer cities. It shattered the countryside that had sustained the empire for generations. The greatest heroes of this war were never emperors or generals. They were ordinary people who refused to abandon one another, even after humanity's darkest nights. The sun always rises again. Civilizations survive because ordinary people choose to rebuild, one field, one home, and one family at a time. The Tang Dynasty would survive, but it would never again be the empire it once was. Empires rise, empires fall, but the stories of those who lived through them continue to guide the generations that follow. I witnessed the fall of China's golden age, yet even in its darkest hour, I learned that civilizations are not remembered